Today I am joined by Dan Oweiler, who is here on behalf of Sterling Financial. And today we are going to talk about RMD. So Dan, thank you. I'm just going to say that. That seems to work best.
RMD is the short for required minimum distribution, which
Yes.
everyone has to take when they have a retirement account starting at age 72. And so it used to be 70 and a half, but in 2019 they changed that. And so with the tax law change, it's now age 72. And so at age 72, you have to start taking money from your retirement accounts, 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, whether or not you need the money, because Congress wants their taxes.
Of course they do. So let's talk a little bit about some of the, I know you said Congress changed some things. So other than the age, what are some other things that may have changed? That
Part of the COVID relief package back in April that they passed, because the stock market took such a large drop in March, I think March 19th was when it really had a big hit. After they closed the whole economy down, the stock market took a big crash. Mm-hmm. And so Congress didn't want to have people having to sell their stocks at that time in order to take their RMDs. And so they gave them a option this year of not having to take RMDs in 2020.
Oh, okay.
So unfortunately, some people had already taken their RMDs, which they later didn't want to, but they had already taken it, and they got their payments from their custodian indicating that, hey, here's your RMD for 2020, and then Congress changed the law. And so people wanted to return that money to their custodian, which they were allowed to do, but it kind of created a little bit of a bookkeeping situation, because custodians understand distributions, they don't understand returns.
I see. So tell me, how does the Form 1099-R come into play?
Well, that's the form that you get from any interest or pension distributions that are sent out to all of us when we earn interest from the banks or CDs or whatever it is. We get a 1099-R in the mail so we can submit it with our taxes.
Oh,
and so as part of your distribution for RMDs, that's included in the 1099 from the custodian. So the custodian sent you out a 1099 for the distribution. However, it didn't show the money that you maybe sent back to them, so you wouldn't have to claim it as taxable income this year. So it's kind of, I've had a few clients call me and say, you know, what do? I took the distribution, but I ended up writing them a check back in September when I got the check in March, and so they didn't want to have to claim that as taxable income. And so there's a way that hopefully accountants will be able to take that into play when they're doing their taxes in April.
Okay, so let's talk about the tax return. So where do you put all this information?
Well, you need to put down the money that you received on your tax returns, but there's also, I think it's Form 4A or something on the 1040 form that says how much you were able to return. So I'm not sure the exact line on the tax return, but their accountants will. But you're able to say, okay, I was distributed that, but I also had quote unquote a rollover, which basically means I don't have to pay taxes on that.
Right.
So,
okay.
So when they got the distribution, they have to recognize that, but where they say rollover, they can put the same amount because they rolled it back into their retirement account, so they don't have to pay taxes on that.
Okay, so for 2021, what's different?
Well, the difference is they have to take their RMDs. They can't give it back, okay? And so Congress kind of waived the requirement in 2020 for 2020, but in 2021, the markets come roaring back. They had a great year from March back to December 31st. It went up, 60% between March and December. And so they have to start taking their RMDs again, and they'll get a 1099-R indicating how much they had to take out.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a bookkeeping error where they just have to make sure their accountant puts rollover for the same amount they took as an RMD. So if they don't want to have to claim it as income this year, they would have had to send a check back to the custodian for the same amount that they received.
Okay. So now you're saying this year you have to take that distribution no matter what. So if
starting at age 72.
At age 72. Okay.
Right.
So you're 72, you don't need the money, yet you still have to take the distribution.
Yeah.
So what then are you advising your clients at that age to do with that money if they don't need it?
Well, there's a lot of things that we call we call it an IRA rescue plan. Some of these people that I work with don't need the money. They don't want the money. They'd rather have the money go to their kids. And so what we're doing actually is using that RMD money to buy a life insurance policy if they're healthy enough to get life insurance, so they can pay the taxes on that IRA when it goes to the children.
Oh,
so we're doing some tax planning and long-term planning with that. If somebody says gets $15,000 from their RMD and maybe after taxes they have $12,000 left over, we'll go out and use that $12,000 to buy a life insurance policy, because that life insurance policy will pay tax-free death benefits.
Oh.
So there's no taxes on the life insurance. They can get that money and then pay the taxes that are due on the IRA when they receive the IRA from the parents or whoever. And so we kind of call it an IRA rescue plan that allows this money to get to the next generation on a tax-free basis, rather than having to pay all those taxes when they receive that IRA from their parents.
Now, see, Dan, that is why people come to you, because that is a great idea.
Well, there's a lot of things that we can do. That's one of the ideas, and it seems to work for a lot of our clients, because we're not buying the life insurance because the parents need it. We're buying it because we're doing tax planning for the children, and most parents want to avoid the tax problems for their children. And so it's one of the ways that we can do that. The problem is as we get older, we sometimes can't qualify for the life insurance. But if we can, there's an opportunity there to get this money to the next generation in a tax favored way. And so it works out for them.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for explaining that to us on the tax as well as the IRA. I think that's
yeah, the RMD this year, it's just a little bookkeeping thing. They need to make sure that they don't, if they send a check back to the custodian of their IRA or 401k, they just need to make sure that their accountant includes that as a rollover, and so they don't have to be taxed on it. Some people were able to say maybe they wouldn't take their RMD till September, so they could just call their custodian and say, don't do it this year. And so they don't have this tax bookkeeping problem. But those that took it earlier in the year and got distributed, they don't want to pay tax on it. They wrote them a check back. There's a little bit of a bookkeeping thing that you need to make sure of.
Okay. Well, perfect. Well, thank you very much for the information.
Hey, and good to meet with you.
All right. We'll see you again soon.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And we'll be right back after this.